Beyond the domain of conventional scientific laboratory, hypothesis testing and rigorous measurement underpin certain disciplines in the commercial world too. Modern management consultant, for example, focuses on marshalling empirical evidence to diagnose organizational problems and to confirm hypothetical strategies for fixing underperforming operations. Here, we'll briefly introduce a short and simple data gathering and needs assessment exercise commonly used in McKinsey's initial engagement process called McKinsey-style diagnostic. Later in this unit, we will describe how to use empirical measures to diagnose issues with an organization's security controls. McKinsey-style diagnostic first states an overall hypothesis related to the business problem at hand, and then marshals evidence or metrics that supports or undermines the theory. The essence of this kind of diagnostic is quite simple. First, the analysis team identifies an overall hypothesis to be supported. For example, the firm is secure from wireless threats by outsiders. The team then brainstorms additional sub-hypotheses that must hold for the overall hypothesis to be true. For example, to support the wireless hypothesis we just identified, we might pose this sub-hypothesis, such as open wireless access points are not accessible from outside the building, and wireless access points on the corporate LAN require session encryption and reliable user authentication. Then the team examines each sub-hypothesis to determine if it can be supported or disproved by measuring something. If it cannot, the hypothesis is either discarded or decomposed into lower-level hypotheses. For each lowest-level hypothesis, the team identifies specific diagnostic questions. The answers to the questions provide evidence for or against the hypothesis. Diagnostic questions generally take the form of the number of X is greater or less than Y, or the percentage of X is greater or less than Y. For example, there are no open wireless access points that can be accessed from the building's parking lot or surrounding areas. Or 100% of wireless access point on the corporate LAN requires 128-bit WAP security. Hence, the diagnostic questions dictate our metrics. The primary benefit of this diagnostic method is that hypotheses are proven or disproven based on empirical evidence rather than intuition, because each hypothesis supports the other. So cumulative weight of hard facts builds a supporting case that cannot be disputed. A secondary benefit of the diagnostic method is that it forces the analysis team to focus only on measurements that directly support or disprove the overall hypothesis. Any issues that cannot be measured will be automatically filter themselves out. So far, the sample hypothesis and diagnostic questions given in this exercise are rather simplistic. Let's look at a real-world example given by the book Security Matrix: Replace Fear, Uncertainty, and Doubt by Andrew Jacquith. A case study about using metrics to diagnose problems. This is about a large, well-known maker of high-end consumer electronics. This company operates a large, reasonably up-to-date network and a full suite of enterprise applications. The CTO, Barry, a pseudonym here, an extremely smart man and fully conversant in the prevailing technology trend. He has a fact-based decision-making style. Barry's problem was simple. His firm had historically been an engineering-driven company with limited need for internet applications. More recently, his senior management team had asked him to deploy a series of transactional financial systems that would offer customers order management, loan financing, and consumer support services. These public-facing systems, in turn, connected back to several internal manufacturing applications, as well as to the enterprise applications, such as SAP and Oracle systems. Barry wanted to make sure his perimeter and application defenses were sufficient before beginning significant deployments. He wanted to know how difficult it might be for an outsider to penetrate his security perimeter and access sensitive customer data, product development plan, or financial systems. Barry's question was, is my company's customer data secure from outside attack? Barry wanted to find out how difficult it might be for an outsider to penetrate his security perimeter and access sensitive customer data. He wanted to find out how good his defense really were, how well his company compared to other companies. To answer Barry's question, our overall hypothesis held that indeed the company was highly vulnerable to attacks from outsiders. To show that this statement was true or non-true, we constructed sub-hypotheses that could be supported or disproven by asking specific questions whose answers could be measured precisely and empirically. Here is a subset of a diagnostic can be employed to test the hypothesis. The overall hypothesis can be decomposed into the following sub-hypotheses. The network perimeter is porous, permitting easy access to any outsider. An outsider can readily obtain access to internal systems because password policies are weak. Once on the network, attackers can easily obtain administrators' credentials. An intruder finding a hole somewhere in the network could easily jump straight to the core transactional systems. Workstations are at risk for virus or worm attacks. Viruses or worms can be spread to a large number of computers quickly. Application security is weak and relies too heavily on out-of-box defaults. The firm's deployment of applications are much riskier than those made by leaders in the field, for example, investment banking. Note that these diagnostics do not exhaust the potential problem space. Time and budget impose natural limits on the number and the kind of diagnostics that can be deployed. To simplify, we go through a small subset of diagnostic questions for 3 sub-hypotheses here. For the remaining diagnostics, please see the link in the resource section. The 3 diagnostic questions for the sub-hypothesis. The network perimeters is porous, permitting easy access to any outsiders, are: how many sites are connected directly to the core network without firewall? How many of these sites have deployed on secure wireless networks? Starting with the zero knowledge, how many minutes are required to gain full access to network domain controllers? The diagnostic question for the sub-hypothesis, an outsider can readily obtain access to internal systems because password policies are weak, is the following. What percentage of user accounts could be compromised in 15 minutes or less? For sub-hypothesis, an intruder finding a hole somewhere in the network could easily jump straight to the core transactional system. The diagnostic question is, how many internal zones exist to compartmentalize users, workgroup servers, transactional systems, partner systems, retail stores, and web servers. To answer these diagnostic questions, a 4-month security risk assessment program was put in place for Barry's company. The network perimeter defenses, internal networks, top 10 most significant application systems, and related infrastructures were assessed. At the end of the 4-month duration, a final presentation was made to Barry and his team on assessing the company's risk in protecting customer data. The matrix that derived from diagnostics played a key role in proving the hypothesis. The evidence was so compelling, in fact, that the initial risk assessment program was extended into a much longer corrective program to strengthen companies' overall security.